Thank you for joining the Jones and Bartlett Learning and Acrobatic webinar around how you can improve teaching and learning outcomes with the Nursing Informatics Adaptive Learning online course. My name is Jennifer Stiles, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Before we get started, I do want to review a few quick housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's web event. All participant lines will be muted, and we do encourage you to use the chat feature located within WebEx to ask questions, which we'll answer live at the end of the presentation. The chat feature can be found in the participant panel, and you can message me, Jennifer Stiles, the host, directly. This presentation will be recorded and will be made available to all attendees post-event, and you'll get some details in your inbox after this presentation. Before we get started, I also want to review the agenda of what we'll be covering today. We'll begin with a brief introduction around who our presenters are, Howard Lurie and Dr. Margaret Hindman. Howard will review the Jones and Bartlett learning and acrobatic relationship, while Dr. Hindman will discuss the challenges of teaching nursing informatics online and address how she did work on this course to aid in those challenges. Howard will jump back in to show how the course and speak to its features and benefits. Then we'll open up the session for your questions. So allow me to introduce Howard Lurie and Dr. Margaret Hindman. Howard Lurie has been involved in the development and deployment of innovative online educational products since the late 1990s. His efforts have included both designing and teaching online hybrid courses, global forums, and managing digital content repositories for startup companies, K-20 institutions, foundations, and educational nonprofits. These experiences leveraged over a 15-year teaching career, during which Howard taught history and digital humanities at the secondary level, community college level, and also in graduate level teaching development programs. And prior to joining Acrobatic, Howard provided consulting services for a variety of higher education and K-12 clients. Previously, he also served as the Vice President for External Affairs at edX, and the Managing Director for PBS Learning Media, a digital repository created by WGBH Boston. As both a teacher and EdTech innovator, Howard has advocated for data-driven, pioneering uses of online digital media to accelerate teaching and learning for both higher education institutes and K-12 systems. Howard completed his master's degree at Teachers College of Columbia University and his undergraduate degree at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Dr. Margaret Hindman is Director of Graduate Studies at the Mary School Black of Nursing. In her role, she is responsible for the administration of a national grant that focuses on the expansion and development of simulation facilities that center on home care and critical care nursing, which is a graduate program focusing on the clinical nurse leader. Dr. Hindman completed a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics from the University of South Carolina. Following her studies in mathematics, she received a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from USC and then a master's degree in nursing from USC as well. After practicing nursing for many years, she completed her PhD with distinction from the Medical College of Georgia. After graduation, she was the recipient of many honors and awards, including the Mary Allen Lindsey Brannon Research Award from the Medical College of Georgia. Her research has been presented at institutions such as New York University and the University of Georgia. Dr. Hindman was also selected as a Brookdale Scholar to the National Institutes of Health. Recently, she was named as a Palmetto Gold Award recipient, which is an award given by the state of South Carolina for nursing excellence for her work in bringing clinical nurse leader education to the state. She was a fellow of the NLM-NIH Biomedical Informatics course in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, at the Marine Biological Laboratory. Her research interests are in the areas of telemedicine and how health professionals access evidence-based practice health care. So at this time, I'd like to turn the call over to Howard. Howard, take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Jennifer. It's great to be on this call and joining everyone here from another cloudy day in Boston, Massachusetts. So we're glad you could all be here. I wanted to provide you with a little bit of a background about Acrobatic. as a partner here with Jones and Bartlett in this very exciting and fascinating opportunity for us. But I want to give you some sense of where we are, where we've come from as a company, because we're very young. We're barely a year old, but we have a very long history. Acrobatic comes out of a tradition having done research at Carnegie Mellon University. And Carnegie Mellon, as you may know, has a long-standing history in cognitive science and what they call human and computer interaction, software engineering, and statistics. So about 10 years ago, about 12 years ago actually, the question that Carnegie Mellon asked itself was how could they take that research and apply it to the developing field of online learning. And out of that came this project in the middle called the Open Learning Initiative. Now the Open Learning Initiative was a grant-funded project, funding from the Hewlett Foundation and Gates Foundation, NSF, and some others. And it really was trying to find ways to build adaptive online courses for a pretty wide range of learners, both at Carnegie Mellon and at other institutions. What we found through that project that still exists at Carnegie Mellon through about 1 million or so independent learners, about 135,000 different enrollments from different colleges and universities across the country. We found a rich trove of research, and that resulted in several longitudinal studies, peer-reviewed research papers, and specifically what we found consistently both with Carnegie Mellon students and community college students, with 4-year and graduate students as well, an improvement in what we call learning gains, faster completion rates, and ultimately reduced costs. And this was the genesis for Acrobatic. The feeling about 1.5 years ago was that we had an opportunity to take this research and bring it to a much wider range of courses. I think the nursing informatics course is a perfect example, and a much wider range of populations and students who could potentially benefit from the cognitive science approach that we have to adaptive learning. That's a very quick sort of flyover of our genesis and where we come from. And I want to talk for just a few minutes about how we do what we do, because for those of you in the nursing informatics field, we think there's great possible correlations to your work with your students and your research and to how we develop our courses, and this is a perfect example. There's really 3 sort of main areas that work that Acrobatic does as a company: science, our technology, and our data. From our science, foundational cognitive science genesis, we really focus on how do people learn. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, our core question. How are students learning, and how can we help them become more efficient and their institutions become increasingly efficient on applying their learning to real world and real case studies. The technology that we've built for this course that we're going to take a fly through today is what we call a cloud-based platform. It's state-of-the-art, meaning that the course literally lives on the cloud environment, and it's available for wide dissemination and types of support that we have in what we call an enterprise-level online course. And finally, data, which we'll talk a lot about today. We all feel that there's a flood of data, of learning data out there, and we think that's really the driver to help students improve and obviously help you as faculty target and focus on how your students can be able to move through a curriculum. So that's a very quick flyover. I just want to talk briefly about this partnership model, and then Dr. Hyman will tell us a little bit about the more detailed, the content side of the work she's done. We're thrilled to be in partnership with Dr. Hyman. She's a national leader in the nursing informatics field, and this has been a great opportunity for us. So, as a young company with a year under our tires, but with a long history, we thought there were 3 huge benefits in partnering with Jones and Bartlett to create this. First, we think there's just a renowned nursing informatics content that comes from the Jones and Bartlett learning textbooks, and we think combining that with our approach to adaptive courseware is a huge opportunity to move forward. Second, we really share the goal of deepening what we call instructional interventions to provide content mastery. Many of us at Acrobatic, I come from a teaching background in social sciences and humanities, and many of us come from K-12 or higher ed teaching background, and we're committed to trying to help students master that content. And finally, the partnership model allows both Jones and Bartlett and the institutions who use the course, as well as Acrobatic, to what we call tune the courseware based upon student usage and data collection. So in many ways, this course, I think, reflects some of the principles of nursing informatics as I've come to learn it and understand it in preparation for today, is that this course becomes more precise and more focused the more people use it. And that's both true for the individual students and also for the institutions who adopt it. So that's a lot of talking. I know it's hard when we're all not in the same room, but I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Heinemann, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about teaching nursing informatics and how we do this in this course. So, Dr. Heinemann, why don't you proceed from here?
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be here. As the audience is well aware, healthcare is currently facing many new challenges in computer literacy and information management. New nurses, as well as experienced nurses, need new skills for this complex, information-rich environment. In early 2007, there was a committee formed. It was called, it had the acronym TIGER, which stood for the Technology Informatics Guiding Education Reform. TIGER was able to unfold a 10-year vision to engage practicing nurses and nursing students in the evolving digital era of healthcare, with the goal of nursing education as enabling nurses to use information technology seamlessly in order to provide safer, higher quality patient care. TIGER was one of the first organizations that identified that informatics is a core competency for all healthcare workers. And they recognized that many nurses lack the information technology skills, which in turn limits their ability to access evidence-based information for the provision of individualized patient care. So the beautiful thing about the JBL Acrobatics course is that it seeks to increase nursing students and returning degree students to the necessary skills that they need to make use of IT in such a seamless transition, so that, we will get the improved patient care outcomes and delivery of patient care. So in the next slide, one of the things that, we want to talk about is what activities lend the course to help with these kind of challenges of making that seamless transition. And so the core competencies as outlined by TIGER, in this course, those core competencies are taken and broken down into smaller learning objectives. And they're practical objectives. They're things that practicing nurses need. So once you have these smaller, more accomplishable objectives, it provides a scaffolding to support the building of the accomplishment of these objectives. So, for example, in this particular course, next slide, please.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. In this particular course, so one example may be that these hands-on simulation labs with an EHR were developed. And the goal of the lab may be to build a comprehensive patient care map. So in the course itself, there's didactic information that's presented with self-check in small bits of information at a time, with self-check activities, and then there might be a quiz that combines a couple of objectives together, and then there's a final assessment, and it all fits together with this hands-on EHR comprehensive task. So it presents sort of an overall framework for the student.
Thank you, Dr. Hyman. So that's a very helpful sort of application of the principles that we look at Acrobatic when we think about how we build a course to this particular example. And I'm going to spend a few minutes before we dive into the course itself. We're going to be able to take you through that today and show you some of the functionality and how it works. But before we do that, I want to give you sort of a visualization of how we do this work. And as Dr. Hyman says, part of our approach is to simply break the competencies of courses into their constituent parts, and then we literally rebuild the curriculum around that in an online environment that allows us to surface data. And so this learning architecture, we really start and with working with subject matter experts such as Dr. Hyman and others, we start at the end. We say, what do we want students to be able to know and be able to do at the end of the course? And that's a concept that flies through the entire approach we take to the development of our courses. We then move to instructional content, and we intersperse types of, as we heard earlier, both formative and summative assessments and activities throughout that course. But it really is a rotational relationship. So as an example, what I wanted to take you through is something in practice. So we looked at this course using the Jones and Bartlett content and using the subject matter experts in the field. We identify the core competencies for this nursing informatics course. We then, below those, we identify a set of learning goals. And then we broke those further into sub-learning objectives. And this is simply developed as through our offices and through our teams, basically unwrap those, both moving down from those competencies to those learning goals to the learning objectives. And those further are then associated with particular skills. Finally, we get to the level of actual activities. And the reason why we do this is we move towards this enables us to create what we call an adaptive approach to learning. And what that translates into is the ability for our platform to respond to students, the way students move through an assessment, to respond to them based upon what their prior use of the content has been, and to make a prediction, an estimate of learning that would then take them to the next level. And so in effect, as we're going to see, we have something called targeted feedback. And targeted feedback provides a series of hints, a series of very specific responses when someone answers something incorrectly, providing reminders, and when someone answers something correctly, providing them reinforcement to move forward. There are course elements there, therefore, is really broken down to a couple of kind of major parts, and I just want to take a look at these before we dive in. What we call scaffolded practice. Our learning theory, our cognitive scientists at Carnegie Mellon remind us that, very simply put, perfect practice makes perfect. So at the core of what our approach really is to give students as many opportunities to practice their mastery of this content. And we have sections of the course literally we call Learn by Doing, the simulations that Dr. Hyman talked about, or Do I Get This? And that really comes from a sense of getting students to ask themselves and be reflective about, do I really understand this content or not? What we call predictive adaptability, targeted feedback, and ultimately all that data that is being collected in the platform of this course are then returned to the faculty and the student and the institution in a set of dashboards. So let's go take a look for a few minutes into what this course looks like. And if you bear with me for a moment or two, I'm going to dive into this course. And so we'll take a few minutes here to walk through different parts of the course, and then we'll certainly leave time for your questions that you've asked in advance and additional questions you might have. So what we're looking at is the just a simple home page for our Jones and Bartlett Nursing Informatics course. And as you can see, as I scroll up, we break down into particular units, the structure of modules, particular activities, checkpoints, and so forth, Unit 2, Unit 3, and so forth. And at the top, we provide students, and I'm actually logged in as an instructor, so I can actually see the roster, what we call the learning dashboard, which we'll take a look in a second, the grade book, and additional activities. What I'm going to do is actually dive into one particular part of this course called, it's just literally in Unit 4, Module 8 in Meaningful Use of Healthcare Records, Electronic Healthcare Records. Now, you can see here these 3 green boxes represent those high-level learning objectives. And let me just say before I go further, there is actually a fair amount, a significant amount of what we call instructional design provided for this particular course. And what that means is, coming out of the Carnegie Mellon and the Open Learning Initiative experience, we have a lot of background data on how students respond to an online course. And in many instances, if they're trying to hunt around, trying to figure out what to click on or where to go, that creates something literally called cognitive noise, which ultimately means we've all felt this, different websites from time to time. I don't know what to do next, so maybe I won't even finish the activity. So we try and design against that. We try and minimize those moments where someone is so deeply confused they don't know what to do. But here are our learning objectives, and let's take a quick fly over into this particular series of activities around the meaningful use of healthcare records. So we create a very clean, very simple to access, a readable page. There's text fairly similar to what you might see in a mainstream textbook. And I'm kind of scrolling through this a little bit more quickly, but here we're able to actually get to the learning by doing. So in this case, the student would have read a little bit about EHRs. They have a particular set of reminders, and then they actually come into a case study. And I'm going to go ahead and click one that actually is giving me the wrong information. And here's a perfect example of what we mean by targeted feedback. So it's saying, well, that's not correct, but it's reminding me where did I get off track, and what is in effect the error that I've made. I can also click here if I needed sort of more hints before answering that question. You can see below for a second. If I come down here, Jessica's a nurse in the ER, treating a patient with an ear infection. And if I'm not really sure, and I'm just still practicing here, and that's again the point of practice, perfect practice, making perfection, or getting us closer to perfection, I can click right in there and get that additional hint. And before I make my attempt, and again, I'm a novice nursing informatics student, I got that one wrong again. I can have multiple tries, and I got it correct. And I'm reminded there by what was the main point to respond to that correctly. I'm going to go a little further ahead, and this is just another way to reinforce that learning, the concept of what we call, did I get this? And this is just a simple drop-down toggle to be able to move forward and see whether the EHR systems allow or don't allow that. That's a very simple slice of the page. I'm going to take a look at one more page, which has a little bit of a different approach. Here, some additional background information, and what we see below is literally a drag and drop a box matching system. So we have about 20, 23, 24 different what we call question types, and we intersperse those through the particular course. And other parts of these courses, there's interactive multimedia and digital media, and as Dr. Hyman said earlier, we were able to build in some simulations. Let me jump ahead now and take a look at what we call the dashboard. So again, I'm logged in as a instructor, and in many ways, this is sort of at the heart of the output valve, I guess you could say, of the data. So I had been in my students would have been in here performing the different assignments, and we're going to think with you in a second about what you can do before a class and during a class and potentially after a class. But these dashboards, and this is that Module 8 that we were looking at before and describing the implications of EHRs. And what I can simply do there by opening it up is this is giving me a sense of my students who have what we call a high percentage learning estimate, a middle range, and a low learning percentage estimate. And you can see that broken down even further. And I can actually, these are fictitious names, but I can actually find out who those students are. And if I need to remediate with them, I'm able to go in and do that. We're able to break these dashboards down to every particular module, learning objective, activity, precisely because of what I showed you earlier, where we had broken that kind of scaffolding based upon the competencies. I'm going to go back over to our deck and just talk about analytics for a few minutes. I know this is a fire hose of information for you all, but we look forward to taking some of your questions. So one of the things that we're often asked in the adaptive learning business is, well, how do you do this? What's your secret sauce? What's the keys to the kingdom? And this is really our attempt to answer that question. And so the question we think about and we ask constantly is, how do you actually measure learning? And so we do this by sort of a three-pronged approach. These are observable inputs. We can gather this data, the numbers of attempts, the help requests, the right or wrong answers, all the things that I just showed you. It will create a body of evidence. But then what we do, coming out of our experience from cognitive science and Carnegie Mellon and the Open Learning Initiative, we actually apply a set of what we call cognitive processes to that observable data, things like learning decay and the phenomenon of goofs and guesses, cognitive load complexity. And these are high-level concepts of how people learn, and we're applying them to this particular course. And ultimately, we end up with what we call a statistical inference model. And this is the predictive engine that is allowing us to create those targeted feedback responses. I know it's a lot of may sound like a lot of sort of technical gobbledygook, but myself as a humanities and social scientist historian, I find that the ability to understand analytics and data really, I think, is a game changer when we think about teaching and learning. So we wanted to throw and share with you and throw out a couple of ideas that we had in working with Dr. Hyman and her team and a number of other people, our learning engineers and the Jones and Bartlett folks, is some ideas of what people can do before class. And so we imagine this course would be used in conjunction, obviously, with face-to-face instruction and a number of different labs and lectures. And what faculty have told us they've done is before class, they're really able to go into those dashboards and review, identify which students are struggling, figure out what type of activities they might be able to target, not necessarily to all your students. Maybe there's a portion of students, maybe there's a way to divide them up in different ways, and ask students to also refer to their own dashboard and be able to come in with questions. So we find that's an enormous help. During class, obviously, there's ways for students, if they're using, depending upon what your teaching environment might be, there's a whole range of different things that could be done in terms of focusing on weak areas of learning and encouraging students who are moving ahead. I think there have been many innovative ways in which faculty have integrated the use of these dashboards into their actual in-class learning. And periodically, obviously, there's a whole range of things that can be done in sort of individual remediation for students. I'm going to wrap up a little bit with some just very high-level reminders of why we think the analytics, and particularly the way we've designed them in this course, can really enhance and accelerate learning, in this case with the nursing informatics course. And we know there's a lot of talk now about learning analytics and adaptive platforms. This is the this is the world in which we live and work, and it's a great opportunity for us to sort of put this the facts on the ground moments with this type of course and with the Jones and Bartlett folks. So we think about responsiveness, the ability to know which students are struggling with which parts of your curriculum at which times. It focuses instruction. It targets practice, and I particularly, as my nominal understanding of the nursing informatics field, that's particularly critical for your students who are going on to the workforce, being able to finally hone their skills when they're going to enter the job market. Metacognitive skills, getting students to think about their own learning. I think when students understand that there's a data stream to the work that they do, they tend to be more reflective and actually metacognate over, why am I having trouble with this particular thing, and what could I do to try and improve my ability to master that content. Obviously, opportunities for differentiated instruction and clearly opportunities for early intervention. So we're at about a little bit more than three-quarters of the way through. We want to leave some time for questions. And we did have a few questions that came in on the chat beforehand. So I'm going to let Dr. Hyman answer this first question from one of our participants from Seattle. So Dr. Hyman, maybe you could respond to this one on what student activities work best for this course.
Sure. I don't think that there is one magic or a couple of magic activities that work for the students. I think it's the totality of the course design. The way the content is presented, the subsequent activities that are associated with that content, the fact that there are formative assessments as you're going along before you ever even get to like the summative assessment at the end of the course. There's a lot of interest and variability, and so I think altogether it's more the total picture that makes for an interesting and challenging course for the students.
Great, thank you. We also had a question. We hope there's some other questions that are going to come in on the chat that Jennifer can feed to us, and happy to have a conversation around those. But Judith in Wisconsin asks, what are some of the best practices for creating uniformity in an online course and a face-to-face course? It's a great question. I would start by saying consistency around your learning outcomes and objectives. I think that we've all learned in many different ways. I'm someone who learned in face-to-face environments and didn't really start teaching with online courses till I had taught face-to-face for 15 years. So I think best practices really, I think at the end of the day, it's still about, what are the outcomes that you want your students to be able to possess and be able to demonstrate, and working backwards from those to break those into those kind of constituent skills. And I think you need to do that whether you're teaching face-to-face or online. I think the best marriage of online and face-to-face courses, what we sometimes call hybrid, is when you have a program that does that. I think there is a danger when online courses just become rote memorization or poorly are not designed in a way that are engaging for students. It can be a waste of their time, quite honestly, and we certainly don't want that to happen. So I think it's that consistency and uniformity that I would at least as coming from acrobatic, that's how we think about it. I'm going to, before we go further, Jennifer, I'm going to see if there are particular questions that we could, Dr. Hyman or myself could respond to. We're happy to do so.
Sure. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Dr. Hyman. That was a wonderful overview. And we do have a question that just came in, and I do encourage folks to use the chat feature within WebEx. You can message Jennifer Stiles. I'm the host, and that question will get sent to me directly. We have a question from Paula, and she asks, there are numerous informatics systems. Which work best with simulation?
Well, I will just briefly comment that I think that actual hands-on, learning by doing is what works best. So if you have a simulation, so the simulations in this course are EHRs. The students are asked to retrieve information just as they would if they were a practicing nurse. And because they're actually in the act of retrieving that information and then formulating a care map, or they are asked to do certain other activities within that EHR, I think it just the simulation solidifies their learning. It isn't about the particular EHR, it's about the overall objectives and the exposure to the different types of information that you can gain within that EHR.
Thanks, Margaret. And we have another question that asks, can the course be taught as a self-guided course?
It could be. I think you would have, certainly, absolutely technically possible. I think it would be incumbent on the institution to provide the type of sort of beginning student services and expectations and be clear in terms of pacing guides and so forth. So it's possible that it could be a self-paced, or it could potentially even be a competency-based approach. That would be up to the institution, and we would certainly be able to work with them to try and find a way to accomplish that. But technically, and from the design of the course, I think you could do that. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Howard. Another faculty member asks for some ideas around some methods to keep students engaged without overwhelming the instructor. And I know we might have talked about this a little bit before, but maybe we could just reiterate this.
Margaret, do you want to take that one, or you want me to dive in?
I'll just make the comment that, and one of the things that, and before I say what I'm going to say, I think one of the things you have to realize in the online environment, things can become very rote. I think that that's one of the beauties of the course, is that in each section we have different activities to help in that formative assessment. So it's not all the same thing all the time. It's not, that formative assessment isn't always a scenario that you have to analyze. It isn't always a question set that you have to do. There are just different activities there. So, for example, when Howard showed you the matching, where you actually have to move the concept and match it up with the scenario, that might be one example. Versus there may just be another one another learning situation where you're actually just answering multiple choice questions that illustrate the material. It kind of depended on which competencies and learning objectives you were talking about for that, but I think because it's not the same thing all the time, that does help in the engagement. Plus the atmosphere itself is just pleasant to look at. It's drawing in, I think. It's not dull.
Yeah, I think that's I'm glad you mentioned the kind of different activities, formative assessment activities that we put in there. I think one phenomenon that we've seen with students is they actually realize that this is a highly personalized walk or pathway through the content. They begin to understand that their own dashboard, there's a student dashboard in addition to the faculty dashboard that you've seen, is that we're creating an individualized experience, ultimately a personalized experience for them. And I think that's in effect, not all students proceeding through the content at the same pace, I think is a very engaging and eye-opening experience. If you've been educated, I would imagine many of our students, and certainly I have, and many of you have been, where it's sort of a one-size-fits-all. This is a completely different approach, and I think it takes faculty. We work very closely with faculty and develop these support models and think with them in partnership. Is how do you frame that? How do you make that make sense to students? Because it is a very different experience, and we've just found that students are attracted to it because it's about where they are in the trajectory of their learning, and how they're going to be able to proceed at a pace that makes sense for them.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Dr. Heineman. I have one last question from someone who asks, do you recommend covering electronic health records in nursing informatics courses? Maybe we could expand on that a little bit more again.
Absolutely. I don't think you can have any kind of seamless transition from the nursing education viewpoint into the clinical practice situation without some practice with an EHR and understanding the capacity of what an EHR can do. Now, one of the counter arguments to that is, well, one institution or the nursing education system may use one EHR, and it's not the same software as what they're using in the clinical facility. And my counter to that argument is this: the more exposure you have to software, the more you have the propensity to learn it. So if you already have an understanding of what an EHR can do, then it doesn't matter which system you're using. When you go to practice, you're going to already have an understanding what that EHR can do for you.
Thank you, Dr. Heineman. And while we're talking a little bit about EHR, I also have another question that comes in from Mike. He asks, are there also activities related to health information exchange, patient portals, personal health records, and being able to obtain information through these applications that may provide a more holistic information than a single EHR?
Well, there's certainly didactic information on health information exchange. There is also built within the course. I mean, we couldn't offer an informatics course without discussing those types of things. In the EHR, there are some activities we look at, both sides of the EHR, actually input of information and then collection of a more holistic I just lost my word. We look at it, there are also activities that look at it from a more holistic viewpoint, but we actually take some patient information that's out there, and then we build an EHR lab around that patient information. So I feel like all that's kind of covered in those different labs.
Thank you for that explanation, Dr. Heineman. We don't have any more questions at this point in time. I do want to point you to two resources that you'll see on the slide in front of you. If you'd like to review the course syllabus and if you'd like to request a personalized course demo, you can visit go.jblearning.com/NIACRO. And if you want to learn a little bit more about Acrobatics Intelligent Courseware, you can visit the Acrobatics site at the URL listed on the slide. You will receive a follow-up email detailing how you can view this webinar. It has been recorded. It will be downloadable soon on our nursing community site found at www.jblnursing.com. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I'd also like to extend a very sincere thank you to Howard Lurie and Dr. Heineman for their time today, and to everyone that took time out of their day to participate. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you again at another Jones and Bartlett Learning event. Thank you.
Thank you.